Chapter 3, State. Alien attack on London thwarted with the aid of soldiers tentatively linked to ex-com organization revealed by Senator Patrick Goldman. Both Senator Goldman and Commander David Bradford were unavailable for comment. Confirmed alien attacks worldwide in noticeable decline as all nations breathe sigh of relief. Cause for the decline is unknown as strategists try to predict their next move. 1645, October 26, 2015, Washington, D.C. David Bradford considered himself a very patient man. Anyone in his line of work would need to be. Any military commander who found excuses to rush into every situation was often paving the way to his own retirement with the corpses of the people under his command. Where fools rushed in, Bradford had learned to wait. His patience, however, was nearing its limits as he found himself in his own personal hell. For the briefest of moments Bradford lamented the circumstances that had caused his current predicament. Some 2 weeks earlier, the Honorable Senator Patrick Goldman's personal inquisition to bring accountability to armed organizations working outside the law came across a series of budget reports with tenuous connections to reality at best. Sensing blood in the water, the good senator from Rhode Island pounced and began to dig further into the people mentioned in the report while attempting to track down the billions of dollars the document hinted at. A dozen shell companies were investigated, each dead end only intensifying the search. Once Goldman's investigation caught up to the records of Otto Zander and his fictitious private military company, the council had made a decision that Bradford still had difficulty believing. Excom had gone public. Goldman's investigation was perhaps a week from discovering hard evidence of the Excom project as well as the shadowy members of the council that supported it. So, like every politician Bradford had ever known, the council escaped the investigation's notice by drawing the public's attention with something shiny, a global military organization with the sole purpose of defending humanity from the alien invaders. The public's reaction was enthusiastic, especially after details of certain operations were declassified and released to the public. Highly sanitized and edited video footage of Excom operatives storming and capturing an alien battleship still in flight was on track to becoming one of the most viewed YouTube videos ever. The reactions from the governments had been less than approving. Self-important blowhards from both sides of the aisle publicly demanded accountability and review of what they termed a rogue organization. Bradford knew in his gut that they more likely wanted access to the alien technology that Excom had acquired so far as well as the developments they had invented as a result. And the Honorable Senator Patrick Goldman had ridden the sudden surge of government support for his witch hunt like a true career politician. Goldman had used his influence to create the International Armed Organization Oversight Committee as well as install himself as its chairman. He had spent hours on every television show he could elbow his way onto demanding those in command of Excom appear before his committee to answer the questions of the American people. Anyone with an ounce of political savvy would know what to expect of the committee, so the council had elected to send the one man who could conduct himself with poise in the middle of the media circus that the senator had planned. Only one man could maintain his composure in the face of an endless stream of ambush questions, circumstantial and sometimes fabricated evidence and the enraged screaming of a self-important politician. They sent David Bradford. For 3 days he had fielded every relevant question and disregarded every ridiculous accusation hurled in his direction as though he knew exactly what was going to be said beforehand. Not that he cared, but Bradford's standing in the eyes of the public was leveling out at approximately 80% positive despite the fact that his name hadn't been public knowledge for more than a week. All but the most hostile commentators felt he inspired confidence, and his answers never made good fuel for political fire. The difference was all the more apparent when compared to the Honorable Senator Patrick Goldman's questioning became borderline hysterical. What few people knew was that Goldman's inquisition didn't have a single chance of catching Bradford off guard with its questioning, because Bradford quite literally knew every word they were going to say before they did. Like several operatives working for Excom, Bradford had begun to show signs of what they had come to call the gift. Just what the gift meant depended on the person who had it, but for Bradford, it was foresight. Through months of careful practice he could passively predict events up to 3 minutes into the future, and when pressed he could extend that out to significantly further. He had even learned how to manipulate his powers to change how events would play out before taking the best course of action. As a commander, it made him nearly unbeatable on the battlefield when he could properly channel his skills. In a committee hearing, it was child's play to reduce the Honorable Senator Patrick Goldman from a smug sausage in a suit to a sputtering beet red sack of outrage. It was Bradford's only reward for having to put up with him. "I have here a list of known sightings of your men, Mr. Bradford." Goldman lifted a stack of papers in one hand, and Bradford did well to hide his growing annoyance at the senator's refusal to address him by his rank. "You've been to places like China, Russia, Brazil, England, Canada, and these United States of America. What gives you the authority to send your personal army wherever you please?" A grin crossed the senator's face as he brought the stack of papers down on the desk in what he no doubt thought was a decisive act before thumbing the American flag pin on his suit coat. "Your henchmen were shooting up this very city just over 6 months ago. I don't know about you, Mr. Bradford, but I find it disconcerting that their hair triggers were so close to the president and the elected officials of this great nation." Several minutes passed in Bradford's mind as he played out several possible actions in his head. He knew what needed to be said, he just had to find the right way to say it. To the rest of the world, less than a second had passed. "As I have explained repeatedly, operations are launched when threats to civilian populations are confirmed," Bradford explained just slowly enough to imply the honorable senator was a child with a learning impediment but respectful enough to not be called on it. "Keep the threat non-specific. I'm sure he'd just love to hear about the more local enemies we have to deal with. Operatives in the field cooperate with local forces to repel the threat before retreating from the theater. That's the position you're taking now." Goldman snapped, before assuming his gotcha grin. "I also have a report that indicates your thugs were in China back in April before any sightings of the aliens or their ships. Eyewitness reports indicate that the aliens attacked that location specifically because your pawns were present. I'm willing to bet that they wouldn't have attacked if your men hadn't been there. Do you know how many innocent Chinese civilians died because of that battle?" 12 died, 7 were hospitalized. Bradford's immediate response sent the senator reeling. 2 of my men were killed and 6 were wounded. The casualty count would have been in the hundreds if not thousands had I not acted on intelligence that indicated an attack was pending in that area. I have no regrets." The senator's sputtering was made all the more priceless as he checked his own paperwork to verify the numbers Bradford had given him. No need to correct him on exactly why we were there in the first place, he thought as he braced himself for the next barrage. Yes, you saved babies in their cribs from a horrible demise. Did you even think for a moment to give this intelligence to the Chinese government? And while we're on the subject of sharing, how long do you intend to hoard the technological developments that your organization has created, Mr. Bradford? Goldman recovered much more quickly than Bradford had anticipated as he stood and indicated to the projected image on the far wall. All the press cameras panned between the overweight senator in his expensive tailored suit to the screen, then back to Bradford. "Much of the technology we use in the field is limited quantity test models, and isn't mass-produced. I do not know the specifics of the engineering, but from what I understand the mechanics of many alien devices are still unknown, which prevents us from safely using them in greater numbers." "Not my best dodge," Bradford did well to hide his grimace. "Perhaps that is the case, Mr. Bradford," Goldman answered before sneering at the commander as he walked over to a box that sat alongside the far wall. "Perhaps you don't share these technologies because you don't have enough to do so. Perhaps it's not because of any manufacturing deficiency but because your allies haven't given you enough." He flipped the lid off of the box and reached inside to retrieve a large object inside a heavy plastic bag. The senator held it up dramatically before letting it drop to the table with a thunk. "Your alien allies, that is." The object in the bag was a helmet with a shattered visor. Unlike the matte black metal helmets that most XCOM operators wore, this was a light blue and appeared to be made of slightly reflective crystal. More importantly, it was designed to be used by someone who wasn't human. Right on cue, the projector images changed to video phone footage of several XCOM soldiers shuffling up the ramp of a VTOL aircraft, followed by 6 quadruped figures wearing crystal armor. The camera zoomed to catch them removing their helmets to reveal the creatures beneath them just as the clip ended. "Damn, I wondered where that helmet ended up," Bradford thought as he mentally reviewed the after-action reports that were submitted after that nearly disastrous operation. "I bet Goldman's been hiding that helmet since the beginning. Still, it won't be enough for the senator's case today." Detailed analysis of the blood and hairs found inside this helmet conclusively proves that its wearer is not of terrestrial origin and the materials are unlike anything found on Earth, Goldman stated as he prodded a finger at the offending headwear. The video projection behind him was replaced with a slideshow of what appeared to be security camera stills from various times and places that showed XCOM operatives working in concert with several distinctly non-human figures. Video and photographic evidence also proves your group has been colluding with these aliens for at least 3 months, despite your explicitly stated goal of defending the Earth from alien threats. Do you honestly think the American people will believe a word of what you say after seeing this evidence? Goldman ended his speech with that same smirk. Bradford chose to smirk back just as the clock struck 5, signaling the end of the hearing for the day. The smirk disappeared from the honorable senator's face as Bradford rose and walked out of the committee chamber without a word. *Wiretap and surveillance logs of David Bradford as observed by NSA agents censored and H. Bell. Personal notes of Agent H. Bell attached by request by Sen. Patrick Goldman and the International Armed Organization Oversight Committee. Events listed below are those that are relevant to Sen. Patrick Goldman's inquiry. Full surveillance logs are available upon request. Top secret clearance required. Physical surveillance of David Bradford, October 26, 2015. 6:05 p.m. Bradford spotted returning to his hotel room after committee meeting adjournment. While inconclusive, facial recognition of subject's driver is a strong match for Xie Zhejiang, an ex-Plazov soldier with known associations with the Chinese Triad. NSA information on Zhang can be found in file number censored. 6:08 p.m. Bradford stops to speak with one of the Marines working security for his floor, SGT Kyle Banner, to arrange for room service to be delivered at approximate 6:45 p.m. Bradford then looks directly at Censored before entering the staircase to his floor. Censored has since switched surveillance duties with H. Bell, given the likelihood of cover being blown. *1. 6:10 p.m. Wireless surveillance equipment inside hotel room confirms subject's return to his room. He then moves the reclining chair to face the northeast corner of the room before sitting and reading a book for 20 minutes. *2. 6:31 p.m. Bradford stops reading to look over at his cell phone, which was placed in its charging station on the tableside bed. Subject walks over to the phone and picks it up before turning to face the northeast corner of the room for 2 minutes and 34 seconds. 6:33 p.m. Bradford speaks with unknown individual before ending call to receive the meal being delivered to his room. The contents of the call can be reviewed in the attached call logs. Date: October 26, 2015. Time: 7:46 p.m. Wiretap: over number censored. Call from, unknown number censored. Call to, David Bradford number censored. Key: David Bradford, DB. Subject A, SA, *3. DB, stop *4. This line and my room are currently being monitored, so anything that you say will be heard by more than me, so consider what you want to say carefully. SA, Jester is gone. DB, when you say gone, do you mean dead or no longer in the vicinity? Could he be hiding his presence? SA, unknown at this time. I've got my specialists constantly scanning for any sign of him, but they have come up dry so far. That isn't conclusive evidence that he's no longer here, considering how good he is at hiding, but for as long as we've been here we've always been able to find a trace of him. DB, any theories? SA, I'm afraid not. Kaleidoscope will be up and at the end of the day tomorrow, and I'll be sending a messenger back home to see if he's turned up there. I'll keep you posted as to what we find. DB, very good. And the other thing you wanted to ask me about? SA, you know, I don't know if I'll ever get used to you doing that. Everyone here has been watching and it seems like you've been taking a bit of a beating. How are you holding up? DB, I'll manage. The hardest part about these hearings is that I have to live through them twice, but at least I am spared the nasty surprises the Honorable Senator Goldman has planned for me. SA, what's your saying? The cat is out of the bag. It was inevitable that the public would find out about the assistance we've been providing. Ever since Captain Song's first mission we've been careful to use wallflower to avoid unnecessary attention, but you've got those pesky cameras everywhere. DB, not your fault or Captain Song's. And you don't need to worry about me. I'll be able to handle whatever is thrown at me tomorrow. SA, and on that note, I hear there is another saying that your people use. When the refuge in anonymity is lost, the refuge in audacity is found. DB, oh, no. I don't think that will help in this situation. SA, I'm afraid it's no longer between the two of us. I had mentioned how unfair the senator was being to you, and how I would like to set the record straight, especially after how the hearing ended. 10 minutes later, Major Fujikawa informed me that your mysterious council representative wanted to speak with me about it. If I didn't know better, I'd think they had overheard the conversation in the rec room. DB, we've got another saying that's relevant. It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. SA, I'll keep that in mind. Regardless, arrangements have been made for me to speak tomorrow morning. I'm hoping I'll be able to resolve this quagmire you're in by putting all of Goldman's concerns to rest. DB, I'm assuming that you'll have a plan for getting past the guards without violence then? You won't be helping my case if you start a battle in the middle of the hearing just by showing up. SA, from what I understand, that will be handled when I get there. The council representative said that arrangements were being made to ensure I would have my chance to speak before the committee. DB, well, I'm not confident that this is going to work out quite the way you think, but if the council approved you sticking your neck out on the chopping block, then far be it from me to question that. Just be prepared to defend yourself against that prick Goldman. He's a career politician with an ambitious streak a mile wide. SA, I've dealt with his kind back home, and while they might not have been as vigorous as this man is in pursuing what he wants, I'm confident I can handle him. I learned from my wife that a blustering buffoon can be disarmed with patience and a winning smile. DB, I'm afraid it will take more than that. Just remember not to rise to his bait. Stay calm. Speak clearly and concisely. The longer you stay composed, the more flustered he'll get. SA, I noticed that. He was starting to resemble an angry tomato by the end of the day today. DB, then you're all set. Knocking can be heard in the background, and that's my meal. Good luck, Captain. Call ends. Notes by H. Bell. *1 censored insists there is no way cover could have been blown. I've reviewed procedures followed and everything was done to the letter. *2 The northeast corner of the room contained a hanging lamp where our camera was placed, and the book he was reading was The Shadow Factory by James Bamford. *3 The tech analysts have run several different tests on the voice samples from the person Bradford was speaking to and have come up with inconclusive results. Overall impression is male, mid to late 20s, but the analysts and I felt there was something off about the voice. We were able to confirm that the voice is completely natural with no synthesis, but also has several frequencies that I'm told are impossible for anyone to create normally and as part of a conversation. *4 It's worth mentioning that the phone had run for less than half a second and Bradford spoke before anything else could be said on the line. It is this agent's opinion that there is a mole within the NSA feeding Bradford information about his surveillance, though there is no conclusion as to how this information is communicated to him, as he's been under surveillance virtually 24 hours a day since he made his presence known. A full review and reassignment is recommended once this detail is complete. *805, October 27, 2015, West Des Moines, Iowa. For the first time in nearly a year, Matt Harris found himself outside of the XCOM base of operations in North America, and he wasn't getting shot at. Any enjoyment over the novel development in his life was sabotaged by two uncomfortable facts. The first was his current outfit. It was a finely tailored business suit with black pants, tie and suit coat, with a dark grey shirt and vest underneath. Tinted sunglasses hid his eyes and he suspected that passing customers in the shopping center thought he was some form of private security. It was true that he had been offered one of the freshly tailored dress uniforms issued to all ex-com personnel, but for this meeting he had chosen civilian attire. Unfortunately, that meant putting up with the glorified noose around his neck. The other uncomfortable fact of the situation was that Matt Harris hadn't been issued leave by himself. "Man, they should be here by now," Lana Jenkins groused as she rotated her right arm through its complete range of motion. Much like Matt, she wore a dark business suit and glasses, though she had also chosen to wear a pair of fine leather gloves over her hands. "I really hope Mom and the boys didn't get delayed. She called last night to say that she and the mob had left the airport for the hotel. Maybe I should give them a call again." "No, Lana," Matt said with a sigh, "I'm sure they're fine. They're probably caught in traffic going downtown to work. Adding 15 minutes to travel time isn't unexpected at this time of day. Just relax. My family isn't here yet and you don't see me wringing my hands over it." Lana shrugged before turning a mischievous grin to Matt. "Your whole family's coming? Does that include your sister?" "Yes, she's coming. She's also young enough to send you to jail if you try anything, and old enough to know you're really not her type," Matt said as he mustered his willpower to resist the urge to cover his face with his palm. "I would also question the wisdom of talking about making a pass at your commanding officer's sister to your commanding officer. We're on leave so none of that rank nonsense matters," Lana dismissed Matt's comment with a wave of her left hand. "And did I say anything about making a pass at her? No, sir, I didn't. That's plausible deniability right there. It's too bad Victor couldn't join us. I feel just a little bad about what he went through. I'm inclined to agree, but he is a bit of a security risk. Once Bradford gets everything settled in Washington they'll probably give him leave," Matt said as he shrugged. Any further discussion on the subject was postponed as a minivan pulled into the parking lot that Matt and Lana now stood in. "That's my family. Just, try and tone yourself down, okay?" Matt asked in a lowered voice that he sincerely hoped didn't sound like begging. "Matt, glad to see you're still alive," the older man leading the trio of newcomers said. Thinning salt and pepper hair framed his tanned and worn skin, and a pair of slightly disapproving brown eyes looked Matt over from head to toe. "I've been hearing some rather grim news about the PMCs around the world. I'm glad that whoever you're working for hasn't seen fit to sell your life for a few dollars. Adam, is that how you properly greet our son?" the woman next to him admonished. She placed one hand over his and held it firmly before turning back to Matt. "It certainly looks like you're doing well. After that business with the army we were all so worried about what you'd do with your life. I'm glad to see you've bounced back." "Thanks, Mom," Matt said sincerely as he pocketed his sunglasses before pointing to the aged man and woman, then the teenage girl at their heels. "Lana, this is my dad, Adam. My mom, Lee. The last is my sister, Lily." He then turned to Lana and added, "This is Lana Jenkins, my girlfriend." Lily interrupted with a knowing look in her brown eyes. Lana's only response was a vocal snark before she covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes were hidden behind her sunglasses still, but her shaking shoulders betrayed the amount of amusement she had gotten from the comment. "Subordinate. She and I had leave at the same time and we're expecting her family to arrive shortly." Matt finished with a forced tone. "Subordinate? So, she spends a lot of time under you then?" Lily added, and her grin only grew as Matt finally surrendered to physical need to face palm. "Ha! I've been trying to get him to do that all morning." Lana finally spoke before turning her own grin against Matt. "Seriously though, our dear Matt likes his girls pretty short." Before Matt could glare at Lana for that comment, Lily blinked and asked innocently, "But aren't you pretty short?" It was Matt's turn to stifle a laugh. He had inherited his father's height at just under 6 feet and Lily hovered at around 5 feet, 6 inches. Lana in combat boots barely reached an inch over 5 feet. It wasn't necessarily Lily's comment that Matt found humorous, it was the look on Lana's face when she realized her impromptu ally in this little gathering might be less than loyal. If you're working with Matt, then you must have some prior experience in the armed forces. Where did you get your training? Adam asked as he gave Lana the same disapproving evaluation. Navy, sir, Lana answered immediately with an innocuous smile. Marines. Adam pressed, and Matt winced inwardly at the tone his father had used. Only a die-hard Army officer could pull off that level of disdain and dismissal while referring to the Marines. Naval Mobile Construction Battalion, actually. Is that so? Adam said and his expression softened somewhat. I knew some CBs back when I served. Good people, every one of them. He leaned heavily on the cane in his right hand before extending his left to Lana. I find it's a good measure of a soldier to test their handshake. Before Matt could warn his dad or prevent what was coming next, Lana extended her gloved left hand and grasped Adam's. I completely agree, sir. You can tell a lot about what a person's been through by their hands, after all. One shake and the hands disengaged and Matt couldn't help but notice his dad looking down at his hand and wincing once he thought everyone was distracted by the arrival of a second van in the parking lot. From what Lana had described of her family, Matt expected a half-dozen ill-mannered hooligans, so it came as a surprise when only 2 people emerged from the new van. The first was obviously Lana's mother, who shared her short stature and blue eyes though her black hair was going grey around the temples. Fine lines and wrinkles had also begun to take root around her eyes and brow, which hinted at the hard life that Lana had never fully explained. The other was likely Lana's brothers judging by eye and hair tones, but that was where the familial similarities ended. He looked young, yet Matt was fairly certain that he was easily 6 feet or taller. The top of big sister Lana's head would barely come up to his chin. No wonder Lily's comment about her height was aggravating, Matt couldn't help but think as the 2 newest members of the group approached. Lana quickly made the introductions for her mother, Lori, and her oldest brother, William, before asking, "Where's the others?" I was looking forward to seeing Robbie and the rest of the hooligans. They're back at the hotel, Lori explained with a regretful expression. Patrick's caught a cold and it's making its way to Jack, Leonard and Thomas. I didn't want you or your friends getting sick, and Robert volunteered to watch them at the hotel. I know you wanted to have a big family get-together, Elaine, but... It's all right, Mom. It's all right, Lana said soothingly. Maybe I'll come by the hotel later today and I can say hello. Seriously, Mom, don't worry about it. She turned back and caught sight of the strange look Matt was leveling at her. What? Elaine? Matt asked incredulously. Oh, bite me, Harris, Lana huffed before walking over to Lily and Lee with her mother in tow. How about us ladies head inside and get breakfast ordered? Then we can share embarrassing stories about our brothers, right? Lily's giggling at that suggestion does not bode well for me, Matt thought to himself, and he mentally weighed the blackmail potential of Lana's real name versus anything his sister could spill. Any further contemplation on the subject was interrupted when Lana's brother fell into step beside him. So, your sister, the older brother, William, started, and any further thoughts about Lana were shelved as Matt's big brother instinct kicked in. He didn't have to look over his shoulder to know his dad was no doubt projecting a glare that could melt rock. The instinctual aggravation sputtered and died as Lana's brother continued, "What was it like growing up with a sister? A real sister, I mean. I'm not certain Lana would appreciate you apparently disqualifying her from the title, William," Matt said as the male portion of the group slowly began to follow the others into the nearby diner. "Call me Bill, everyone else does. Has she explained our family situation at all to you?" Bill asked after a moment's hesitation. When Harris nodded, he continued, "With Mom working so much she couldn't be around for us. Lana made sure we ate well, got good grades, and beat the shit out of anyone who gave us trouble. I see Lana next to your sister and I can't help but think they're completely different creatures. They're probably more alike than you think, Matt said. The men entered the diner and nearly ran into the women that had stopped just inside the doorway. What's the holdup? Matt asked, and the only answer came from Lana as she pointed to the big screen TV set up over the bar. Every person in the diner was frozen in place, from the waitresses bringing out plates of food to the patrons at their tables. All eyes were glued to the figure that appeared on the screen, and all Matt could do was whisper, "Oh shit." Shining Armor was on the television. *805, October 27, 2015, Kaleidoscope Chamber. Are you positive that you want to do this, Captain? Major Fujikawa asked Shining Armor as the pair entered the Kaleidoscope Chamber. I don't know how politicians are back in your home, but they're as vicious as starving dogs here, Americans especially. It could get very ugly, very quickly there. I appreciate your concern, Yumiko. I've been watching the television with you and the others. This Goldman used his trump card at the end of yesterday's meeting. By appearing first thing in the morning I can disrupt his momentum and seize the initiative before he can build on yesterday's revelations, Shining Armor summarized as he walked around the central platform to a smaller room. He paused for just a moment to look down at the uniform he wore and let out a sigh. I must confess I would be more comfortable if I were wearing my traditional dress uniform. Major Fujikawa smiled apologetically before answering. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. The council felt that similar color schemes for the uniforms would symbolize unity, plus Americans have a bit of a cultural bias against red coats. Also, the politicians would probably be uncomfortable with the whole, no pants thing. She coughed into one hand before turning quickly. I'd better get back to the rec room if I want to see how this all unfolds. I hear Frank's bringing popcorn. Without another word, she beat a hasty retreat. Shining Armor couldn't help but chuckle at the human's reaction even as he entered the adjoining chamber. It's been quite the adjustment for every pony and everybody, but I'm glad that most of us have adapted to our situations quite well, he thought to himself. Yumiko Fujikawa was the most senior human field operative in XCOM, and had done wonders in helping the other humans, except that there were beings from other worlds that did not want to kill them. The fact that she was also gifted with magic and had apparently been taught by Twilight herself only raised Shining Armor's opinion of the human. Unfortunately, not all the humans had been as open-minded. Good morning, Victor, Shining Armor greeted as he caught sight of the human in the center of the room. Unlike the other humans in the chamber, he was clad from head to toe in the matte black Titan armor that they wore into battle. A purple stripe and emblem on his right arm marked him as a magic user, while the armor of his left arm was stripped away and replaced with a different style gauntlet and a bundle of wires that snaked up his arm and into the bulky back of the armor. I hear you'll be transporting me to the site and back. That's correct, sir, Victor said abruptly, and didn't offer any further explanation. He also kept his eyes averted to the screens in the room and didn't glance once towards the unicorn. This type of behavior had become normal whenever Shining Armor had reason to speak with Victor, and he had almost given up on trying to win the human over. His time with Cadance had made him very sensitive to the subtle emotional cues that most species shared, and Victor had proven to be a difficult puzzle. The other holdouts who had resisted the help of the equestrian volunteers showed clear markers of fear or anger, but this human had guilt written all over his face whenever Shining Armor saw him. I don't have time to ponder just what has been eating him, Shining thought with a mental shrug. Captain Harris has a lot of confidence in you, and I can see why. Teleportation isn't an easy thing to manage, I can't even do it myself. My little sister Twily could barely manage it once upon a time, he stated with his best winning smile, and was rewarded with a barely contained win CE from the human. More guilt? Maybe he hurt someone with his magic. Kaleidoscope, Zhang. The committee is starting in 1 minute, a disembodied voice announced from the speakers in the ceiling. I'm sending teleportation coordinates now. There's a 3-minute window while this area is clear. Solid copy, Zhang, Victor said as he brought his helmet over his head. Unlike the majority of helmets that Shining Armor had seen, this was made almost entirely of black-tinted glass, which was thankfully devoid of the ghoulish imagery other humans had scrawled on theirs. Coordinates have been received and are locked in, beginning charging sequence now. Captain, we'll be teleporting in 30 seconds, Victor explained as he knelt and placed his left hand on the chamber floor. The other humans in the chamber all stepped back as Shining Armor took his position. I know I'm not smart enough to understand it, but I can't help but be curious as to how the humans combine technology and magic. Or why they would need to at all, Shining Armor mused as he watched the cables connecting Victor's gauntlet to his armor began to glow and a visible heat haze began to emanate from them. A high-pitched whine assaulted his ears even as the countdown approached 0. The whoosh of displaced air and burst of light heralded the completion of the spell, and the dimly lit chamber in the XCOM facility was replaced by a richly furnished waiting room. The only occupant in the room was a tall human with silvery hair and goatee and a serious expression which was only enhanced by the scars running along the right side of his face. "Good morning, Shayaja," Shining Armor greeted the human as he trotted up to the double doors. "You've got front seats to history. You ready?" "I doubt anyone is ready for what is about to occur," Shayaja replied before appending his statement. "Well, the obvious exception being Commander Bradford." He looked from the unicorn to Victor. "I would recommend taking your helmet off, Corporal. I suspect the tension will be high enough without everyone speculating on the nature of just what you might be." When Victor complied with the request and stood at Shining Armor's flank, Zhang turned and pushed the double doors open. "Excuse me. Disruptions will not be permitted." Goldman spat, only to stand up clumsily and sent his chair flying as he caught sight of Shining Armor. "Security!" he shrieked even as his attempt to backpedal was impeded by the media desks behind him. The officers at the other entrances were fast on the draw as more than a few managed to draw their weapons before a booming voice from the back of the chamber stopped them. "Weapons down and safeties on." Nearly everybody swiveled to stare at the voice's owner, and even Shining Armor nearly did a double take. His research into the political climate of Earth had revealed a dizzying number of names and faces to memorize, but even with all his research it was quite easy to recognize the current Vice President of the United States lurking at the far end of the chamber. "I want to hear what he has to say," the Vice President said in an even tone, and he locked eyes with Shining Armor without flinching away. Could this be one of XCOM's mysterious council members? He thought to himself before filing that possibility away for later consideration. "I have more important matters to concentrate on." Commander Bradford stood up and surrendered his place at the table in the center of the room before holding an arm out towards the unicorn. "To the honorable members of this committee, may I introduce Captain Shining Armor, Prince of the Crystal Empire and Commander of the Equestrian Expeditionary Forces that has been aiding XCOM and all of humanity." "Thank you, Commander Bradford," Shining Armor answered formally and in English, and the entire room held its breath. Every set of eyes was upon him, some with fear but more and more with anticipation. Dozens of video cameras had locked onto him as well, and he had to resist the urge to wave a hoof at the untold millions who were probably watching. "As already stated, I lead the volunteers from my world in defending Earth from the barbarians who are attacking it. The people of XCOM have proven themselves to be good friends, and I do not wish to cause them trouble with any of you by helping them. Given humanity's current circumstances, it is perfectly understandable to be suspicious of an outsider, so I hope that my presence here can alleviate some of these concerns. I'm afraid I have a limited amount of time, and there are restrictions on what I can say, but I will now answer any questions you may have concerning me or the forces under my command." Dead silence answered him, but all good things come to an end. "Bullshit." Goldman spat as color began to finally return to his face. "You think I'm going to believe that? That you're here to help us out of the goodness of your heart? You're honestly trying to sell that your people are risking their lives out of make-believe altruism?" "No, Senator. 6 months ago my people were not aware of your existence or the threat you were currently facing. It was only after one of our citizens found herself here quite by accident that we were informed of your situation," Shining Armor explained evenly. When she finally was returned to us, she explained in great detail the help she had received from her human friends and the terrible struggle you are currently in. Any friend to her is a friend to me, and my people value friendship above all else. Shining Armor took a moment to look over the other humans in the room to gauge their reactions. The vast majority were frozen in place and simply staring with trepidation in their eyes. The guards around the room had their hands on their weapons, but Shining Armor couldn't exactly blame them for that reaction. The men and women operating the cameras from the media tables were awestruck, and the unicorn didn't have to stretch his imagination to figure out just what headlines were going through their minds. Fucking bullshit! Goldman roared as he slammed his hands down on the table in front of him. What was your kind promised for your help? Resources? Slaves? I bet this XCOM is just a front for your human lackeys, isn't it? Just how many of you alien freaks are already here just waiting for the right moment to strike? Shining Armor patiently waited for the increasingly hysterical senator to finish, or at least catch a breath, before answering. To your first question, we have neither asked for nor accepted anything that wasn't necessary to help our human friends in their fight. Regarding your accusation, the XCOM project was already in place before our arrival and we contacted them directly. To your second question, I'm afraid the numbers and disposition of my people is a state secret. State seek, I am the state. To clarify, Senator, it's a secret of my state. And to offer a correction, you are not the state. You are an elected official who was chosen to represent the interests of your people. Before Goldman could interrupt, Shining Armor's horn glowed and the overweight human was rendered silent despite his attempts to shout the unicorn down. I studied your forms of government before this meeting, Senator. I was initially perplexed and a little worried about how humans could install people in positions of power without the wisdom and oversight of an immortal ruler while also avoiding bloody succession wars. The idea of a representative democracy isn't unheard of on my world, so I was initially relieved that you had such a system in place. It allows the government to exist by the consent of the governed, and should you overstep your position there are mechanisms in place for your replacement. I had every expectation that your people were prosperous because the best person possible could be elected to a position where they could do the most good. Then I had the opportunity to watch your little committee on the television. What I saw was a pompous windbag applying all of his efforts not to help his people, but to help himself. You created this committee with purely selfish goals in mind at best, or as an attempt to sabotage the humans who are fighting every day to save your people at worst. I honestly cannot comprehend how you were elected, as it is quite clear to me that you do not have your people's best interests at heart. It is my sincere hope that if nothing else comes from these proceedings, it is that those misguided people who voted for you realize your true nature and never vote for you again. Shining Armor paused for just a moment before using his telekinesis to retrieve Goldman's chair from the floor and placed it behind the senator. You will now sit down. You will now be silent. You will not disrupt these proceedings any further. When Goldman's muted screaming reached a comically feverish level complete with flying spittle and pointed fingers, Shining Armor pushed the chair into his legs, which caused him to fall backwards heavily into it. I apologize for my outburst. I'm afraid I have little patience for politicians who exist for their own sake, Shining Armor stated sincerely before clearing his throat and looking to the other humans in the room. Now that the Honorable Senator Goldman has surrendered the floor, would anyone else like to ask a question? Several moments of silence passed before one of the camera operators in the media area spoke up. You said that one of your people came here before. Was it someone important? Shining Armor's expression switched from mildly disapproving royalty to sheepish big brother in the blink of an eye. It was my sister, actually. She was dearly missed by her friends and family while she was away, and it makes me happy that she was able to make so many friends while she was here on Earth. Was she part of the royal family? You're a prince, right? The next pair of questions came from another in the media section with far less hesitation. I am a prince by marriage, and my sister wasn't royalty during her time on Earth. She was elevated to her current position after her return, though. I have a question, the vice president spoke up, but his question sounded more rhetorical than curious. "Why can't we hear Senator Goldman?" "That will require a bit of explanation that I'm afraid I can't adequately do in the time I have this morning. What I can say is that my species is capable of altering how the world works around us to varying degrees." To illustrate his point, Shining Armor pulled several bits of paper and writing utensils from around the room with his telekinesis and organized them on the desk beside him. "The simplest explanation I have is magic, but I understand that isn't much of an explanation at all." Little by little the tension began to ebb from the room, and within an hour Shining Armor was convinced his approach had won over the majority of the humans in attendance. Senator Goldman could do little more than cross his arms and glare angrily like the impotent ball of rage that he was. 1715, October 27, 2015, Washington, D.C. David Bradford followed closely behind Zhang as the pair entered the secure garage where their vehicle was kept. It looked like one of the hundreds of glossy black sedans that the politicians used to commute to work, but under its common appearance was enough protection to classify the vehicle as a tank. With the threats that XCOM dealt with on a daily basis, no expense had been spared to protect Bradford. Naturally, Bradford thought it was a waste, as any attempted ambush would have a far more difficult time getting past his foresight than any armor plate. What the car did give him, though, was privacy. Bradford stepped into the car's back seat as Zhang took the driver's seat. Less than 10 seconds passed before he brought his phone up to his ear. "Congratulations, Captain," Bradford said without preamble. "Your little stunt nearly crashed Google when millions of people simultaneously submitted a search for your name." C-SPAN also set a few records as 85% of Americans tuned in to watch the hearing. Your verbal evisceration of Goldman has been watched an estimated 2 billion times after the first upload to YouTube, with nearly 500 million unique viewers in less than 12 hours. I might be premature in saying it, but I think that you were successful in getting your message out to the people. I imagine so, though I still have a hard time grasping just how quickly news moves around your world." Major Fujikawa said that some nations had translators working in real time in other countries so that almost everyone could understand even as I was talking. "It's just a little awe-inspiring," Shining Armor said sincerely. "Never thought I would speak to so many all at once, and it felt quite good to put Goldman in his place." "It felt good to watch you do it," Bradford said, and only in the privacy of his car did he allow himself to grin so widely. A moment of silence passed before Shining Armor answered. "Let me guess, our conversation over the phone last night was entirely for show? You knew how this would turn out, but you still tried to talk me out of it." "Had I not tried to talk you out of it, you would have approached the committee differently and the ending would have been not quite as successful." Bradford paused before closing his eyes and inhaling slowly. "Captain, your messenger will be arriving shortly and you'll have a lot to do. I'll be back at the facility as soon as I can." He turned off his phone and tapped the glass privacy screen separating the front of the car from the back. "Zhang, we won't be returning to the hotel." "Have they located Discord, sir?" "Yes, but that's not the worst of it." 1700 hours, October 27, 2015, Canterlot. A change had taken hold over the normally picturesque capital of Equestria. The once clear skies were now dotted with ominous thunderheads, and flocks of Pegase guards stood atop them. Guards on every wall scanned the skies and performed their duties with rigid precision, and more than one couldn't help but look to the northwest, where Cloudsdale once stood. Most of the guard and the entire civilian population had no idea what catastrophe had struck the Pegase city, but the undercurrent of fear of something similar happening in the capital was on everybody's mind. It was this heightened alert status that caused a squad of Pegase to raise the alarm when Discord was spotted hurling himself at the capital with all the surety of a spear. The outer patrols attempted to halt his approach but were quickly left behind. A warning bolt of lightning followed by several with lethal intent did nothing to slow him down. Magical barriers and spells sprung up and did just as little to stop him as the stone of the castle's walls. He flew through a dozen rooms before halting in Celestia's personal chambers. The Alicorn was unconscious on her bed, surrounded by several unicorns in medical attire. Celestia's aurora mane had deflated into a light pink, and the commanding presence she once possessed with impossible ease was gone. She looked fragile, mortal. Discord simply stared in horror even as the doctors launched several impromptu and completely ineffectual attacks in defense of the princess. When the shouting of one of the guard captains joined the doctors, Discord finally spoke. "The creatures that attacked her, where are they, Captain?" The captain's shouts led into attacks, so Discord slowly turned to face him. The bed chamber began to fade into a lightless void as he slowly faced his attacker. "You will give me the answers I require, or I will take them from you, Captain. I promise that I will not be gentle." He set his yellow eyes upon the captain, and he continued to turn. Pony eyes, griffin eyes, fish eyes, and eyes beyond all description set themselves upon the captain, and a multitude of claws, paws, pincers and tentacles began to reach outward. "The sun!" The captain yelped even as he tried to back away from something he could not comprehend. "Celestia banished those that attacked Canterlot to the sun. Ya see? That wasn't so hard, was it?" Discord said cheerily, and the sanity-eating spectre vanished as though it had never been there. He patted the captain on the head with his paw before teleporting himself out of the bed chamber. Banishment to the sun was far from the horrific death that the punishment implied. Any who had angered Celestia enough to earn such a punishment found themselves in a blank non-space that was devoid of all sensation and feeling. Time did not pass for those that were banished, as their physical bodies were kept in a kind of suspended animation to preserve them, but time for the mind would pass terribly slowly without a means of distraction. Well, bit off more than we could chew, Discord projected his thoughts into the void and was rewarded with a plethora of thoughts sent back to him. "You should count yourself lucky that you encountered Princess Celestia. Princess Luna would have killed you all cleanly, true, but she would have killed you. Celestia is learning the value of mercy, and was perhaps a bit too lenient in her punishment. Now, unfortunately, you must answer to me." He could feel ripples of confusion answer his declaration, but Discord paid them no heed as he spun together a magical array and set it into the banishment spell. Instantly the void was filled with telepathic screaming as the prisoners' bodies were manifested on the surface of the sun and they burned. "Well, you've got a lot to think about, so I'll stop distracting you. Enjoy." If Discord's thought form had fingers or a mouth, he would have sneered and waved cheerfully as the banishment spell restored their bodies, only for them to burn again and again.